You're probably a solid developer, maybe one of the better ones on your team, but if a promotion feels out of reach or AI roles at 200K plus feel like they're for someone else, the problem isn't your resume. I had the same frustration before I figured out what companies actually paid top dollar for. And once I did, I went from being just another engineer to being the one Apple, Meta, and Netflix were calling. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the mindset that made that happen and why it's more accessible right now than it's ever been. First of all, let's talk about the tech layoffs. It's not just about cutting headcount at the moment. It also shifts what companies are paying for. So right now, generic developers are the first ones to get cut, mainly because if you're just executing tasks, that's actually the easiest to replace, especially AI is able to do that right now. And what I realized is just grinding harder, it doesn't necessarily move the needle or move you forward. Understanding how to use AI and leverage and have more of a bigger impact is going to have a much better impact than you just learning more skills, especially now with AI could do actually execute a lot of these things right now. But one thing for sure, if you start your shift now, you'll be in a much better position in 12 months from now. One of the first concepts you should consider is stop solving tasks and start owning problems. So one thing I want to point out is the difference between the two is completing work versus owning outcomes. So what's the difference? It's kind of like the difference between strategy and tactics. Completing work is actually like the tactics, the actual execution of it, right? Whereas owning outcomes is more of this is what we're trying to achieve, how, and this is the overall like strategy, how we're going to achieve it. You're the strategist, you're the person in charge to make that happen. Tactics doesn't necessarily involve you. It can involve you, but it doesn't necessarily involve you solving it. It's you could deploy other people to do it, but or finding other people to complete the work. But the main idea is that you're owning the outcome of it. It's kind of like if someone outsourced you to solve a problem, they don't really care how you do it, is as long as it gets done. They just know that if they ask you to do it, it's going to get done, right? So, and a lot of the cases, for example, in my case, for example, I had to design a user interface, a user experience for for one of our products that we had to build out, right? Now, the thing is, I went in and found someone who specializes in user experience, worked with them, and I linked it with our engineers to figure out the actual technical parts of how that would work, and then link it to the benefits of what the end user is expecting, and use and helped. And you had the person who was the user experience, the expert in that field, explain how that would work out and then after, once we figured that out, then we went and hired actual front end engineers to go in and build out to our specification. Now, every one of those things I could figure out myself, but one, I found people who are experts in those fields, and I basically interface with a lot of different departments to get it done. And at the end of it, we had actual working product to spec that worked to the end user to the expectations of the executives. And at the end of it, I own the outcome of it, and which is what was expected from all the stakeholders from there, right? So the thing is, I didn't actually complete each individual work, though I could have, but that's not necessarily the point. And that point, that wouldn't necessarily be the best use of my time. One, because there are people who could do it. That's their job, and they're very good at their job, so they could do that. And two, they could work in parallel. So the amount of like man hours or people hours it will take to do that to make that happen is reduced because it all happened simultaneously. If I did it myself, then the time process would take longer. Maybe I'm not as good and in each area as everyone else, but at the end, I was able to coordinate and made the outcome happen. And each one of those people by themselves are an expert in their field, but they couldn't wrangle the final outcome together. They just knew the parts they're actually contributing to. So one of the things to test is the replacement test. I just mentioned all those people that were involved in that project. So let's look at the replacement test. So, for example, if that person who designed the user experience, if they weren't there, would that still work? Well, I could find another replacement to put that together, right? The same thing with the engineers who actually designed the front end. I could find someone to replace them to actually execute the work because they already have the strategy. But myself, who is actually wrangling everything, I was the liaison or the link between as pretty much the end user, what is expected from the stakeholder, what is expected from the engineers to have the features for the benefit we wanted, what is the specifications we need to work out with the user, the UX designer, right? For the user experience. And also, what are the specifications that we needed for the front end people? So, in terms of the replacement test, I was much harder to replace to make that whole system work. So owning the outcome made myself more valuable in that situation, and that's basically pretty much where you want to be right now. Just getting more skills doesn't necessarily mean that you are more valuable. It's more of the impact, and owning outcomes is what makes you more valuable as opposed to just completing work itself. Because completing the work itself, once it's specified, you can find other people to do it. So what you want to do is find one problem to own that nobody owns right now. So you are the go-to person, and then you own the outcome. So now people know when you want this done, they go to you for that, right? And then you'll coordinate and orchestrate how everything will be done from that point. And you make yourself irreplaceable. One thing I want to actually point out is that your tech stat is not your actual asset or your skill set right now. It's your domain. That is your asset. So right now, if you're able to apply AI to a specific domain, that is where the value is. That is what companies are paying 200K plus, knowing that combination of domain specific knowledge plus how to apply AI to actually solve domain specific problems, right? I'll give an example for myself. Why companies such as Apple reached out to me for projects like uh, Apple Vision Pro, or why I work on self driving cars because of my background in 3D computer graphics and VFX. I knew how that domain worked. Now, combining that with AI to solve very specific problems that only someone in that domain, an expert in that domain, would know, or someone who's very, very knowledgeable in that domain will know, that is what made you stand out than someone who just generically knew how to use AI or just a generic programmer in itself, right? So basically, you could think of this as like the T-shaped flip framework. So your domain knowledge, that's the top of that T, and you applying AI going down that T, that is basically how you could actually apply and make money off of that skill set. So your action item here is find 3 problems in your current domain that AI could actually touch. And that is actually your positioning and how you could actually bring value to a company and make yourself worth a lot more in their eyes. Here's a concept I really want to stress home is that urgency is actually a decision and not really a feeling. And what I mean by that. So, first of all, a lot of people will want to wait until they're ready. If you ask them to do something new, they're like, okay, well, things are going on right now. So when everything lines up, then I'll start. Right. Now, the thing is, that feels comfortable until it's not because you feel like you have all the time in the world, and all of a sudden it's going to feel like out of nowhere, AI took over. I mean, it's already happening right now. And then you feel like it's too late. Right now, the AI window is real and it's not moving slowly. It's already here, but it's still a window, but you have to act now for it, right? Personally, I saw this shift 10 years ago. I was working at big companies and literally they have their every all hands meeting every quarter to explain to the company the vision, where they're going in the next 5 years. And they keep showing basically people's as assets, as resources. And they're showing, okay, this is how many people are doing the work right now, and this is our output. And in 5 years from now, we're going to see a lot more output with a lot less resources for that. And people, it didn't take it didn't take long to figure out, put two and two together that the resources that they're putting down are actual people. So companies were actively trying to reduce their workforce but have a higher output. And AI happened to be that vehicle to do that, right? So I saw that I'm like, okay, well, companies are actively trying to do that. So how could I position myself to be part of that that solution? So instead of the people just, owning outcomes as opposed to just executing and solving problems in that sense, right? Or basically just executing on the test, owning the problem and solving it, right? And that's when I started looking to AI and machine learning and whatnot. And it seemed like out of nowhere that it just taken over, but it's been a while that this has been active, right? So the preparation window framework is to prepare now so you're in a good position when you need to be. And the action item I want you to set right now, especially now, it's everyone always want to wait until all the conditions are perfect, which never happens. But set one non-negotiable daily block of learning, right? And this is not a goal. This is a decision. And one thing I want to stress home about that is that, like, for example, people say like, I don't have time, I'm going to skip it this day, right? There's certain things like, for example, people don't skip their work, right? They don't decide like, I'm not going to go into work today. Why? Is because there's a real consequence if they don't go into work, they don't get paid, they can't have their livelihood, right? Or you don't see parents just not pick up their children some days just because they didn't feel like it, or they didn't, they couldn't achieve it because there's traffic. It's a non-negotiable. If you don't pick them up, there's real dire consequences. So the urgency is actually a decision. You decide how urgent something is. If you see right now an opportunity to learn AI is an opportunity right now that you, because the window is really, really small right now, you'll make it a non-negotiable to make sure it happens. I wanted to point out basically the anti-pattern moment right now. So the trap most people are going through if they want to learn AI is that, okay, well, I want to get more certification, do more tutorials, do more lead code, so pass coding interviews and things like that. The thing is, developers who are stuck are almost the ones who are always busy. And I want to point out that the cost is not learning these things. These are important and these are required, especially if you're going to do coding interviews and all that. But the main thing is the cost is missing the opportunity window while others move ahead with it. It's actually executing and doing real actionable items, putting into practice what you've learned. So you have to know, first of all, know what you need to know and not go down rabbit holes, learning unnecessary things. Learn what you need to learn, but then actually put into action. That is what's important to do here. I want to bring up the mindset of the people who've successfully transitioned over to 200K and more. One of the things is that, first of all, they decided that it will happen. They already visualize what the outcome will be and how they will be and where they'll be in their career. So that's the first thing. If you don't visualize it and you don't believe it and start taking actions with that towards a goal and work backwards, like this is the end goal. What does it take to go here and then work backwards? It's less likely, or it's a lot more difficult, I would say, for it to happen, as opposed to like, well, this is the end goal. This is what we're working towards. And also makes it easier to make decisions is that, well, does it serve the end goal of what I'm trying to achieve? If not, then you drop it. It helps you to keep focus with that, right? The other thing about that is you don't wait until you feel qualified, because you'll never will feel qualified, especially when you start off at something. You're actually by definition not qualified to do something, right? The only way is by doing it. You're going to be bad at it at first, but by doing it, you'll see what you did wrong, improve on it until you get better. And at one point you make that transition or pass that threshold where you are qualified and you don't even realize it. But waiting for you to be qualified, you'll never start. And then you'll never actually get, never actually get qualified at that point. The other thing as well is, if you want to make 200K or more, set 200K as a floor and then build towards it, right? What are the things that are missing for you to be making that as your minimum threshold? Make sure you have those skills and then go towards that and then surpass that afterwards. And with that being said, make sure you have the skills. Doing small scripts, doing small wins, those things compound. Like you'll see the difference. Like, why aren't you making it now? What's the delta? Why aren't you making that amount now? What is the skill set you're missing? And one by one, you just learn each things. And as long as you complete them and keep going, they'll compound and you'll eventually get there. Your skills got you here, but it's your mindset that's going to determine where it goes. Remember, it's one domain, one problem, one decision. That's where the gap is. You know your domain. If you know the problems specifically in your domain and you could solve that, you make that decision to solve that problem, that's where you create your value. If you want exact steps to make that move for the skills, the positioning, and the path to 200K plus AI role, check out the links in the description.